4 kilometers below the waves, at the bottom of the Atlantic, investigators search for the remains of Air France Flight 447. 228 people are gone. Air crash investigators face a monumental task. The answers may lie in the wreckage, but finding that evidence will take years. Air France Flight 447 is crossing the Atlantic Ocean. The Airbus A330 is flying an 11-hour direct route from Rio de Janeiro to Paris. 58-year-old Captain Marc Dubois is in command. He's been a pilot for well over half his life and is now one of the most senior captains at Air France. First Officer Pierre-Cédric Bonin is 32 years old. He's been flying the A330 for about a year. 37-year-old relief pilot David Robert is on standby. The three pilots fly in shifts to stay alert. There are 216 passengers on the overnight flight. As they fly, an onboard computer monitors the engines, hydraulics, and other systems. It also sends progress reports to Air France headquarters. 3 hours into the flight, the captain reports reaching a navigational waypoint off the coast of Brazil. At 1:49 a.m., the A330 leaves Brazilian radar surveillance and enters a communications dead zone over the mid-Atlantic. 2 hours later, an air traffic controller in Senegal tries to contact the flight.
Air France 447, this is Dakar. Do you copy? Come in, Air France 447.
No one has heard from the crew of Flight 447. By the time the plane should have reached French airspace, controllers still can't make contact. At Charles de Gaulle Airport in Paris, the 11:10 a.m. arrival time comes and goes with no sign of Flight 447. The A330 would have run out of fuel by now. The airline begins notifying families. The plane has almost certainly crashed at sea. By the afternoon of June the 1st, the world learns that Flight 447 from Rio to Paris has mysteriously vanished. Searchers scramble to the mid-Atlantic to look for the plane and survivors. It's one of the worst accidents in the history of commercial aviation. An advanced passenger jet is gone. 228 people are presumed dead. The job of solving this mystery falls to the BEA, France's air safety agency. It's under enormous pressure to come up with answers. There's a huge area to search, thousands of square kilometers of open water. Air and naval forces scan the ocean looking for any sign of Flight 447. Finally, after 5 days of searching, a Brazilian pilot spots a few scattered pieces of floating debris, wreckage from an A330. The find erases any lingering doubts about the crash. Everyone aboard Flight 447 is dead. But it's the wreckage lost at the bottom of the sea that investigators need most. Wreckage that includes the vital flight recorders. The black boxes are so vital, they're equipped with a locator beacon to help investigators find them, even underwater. But the clock is ticking. The beacon can only send a signal for 30 days. What's more, the mid-Atlantic Ocean is 4.5 kilometers deep in some places. Deeper than the remains of the Titanic. Other team members are scrutinizing the only hard evidence they have so far, the 24 maintenance messages sent by Flight 447's Aircraft Communication Addressing and Reporting System, ACARS. ACARS messages are highly technical. They're not designed to reveal what the crew saw, said, or did during the flight. But they do provide an intriguing lead. One of the maintenance messages notes a failure in the device that measures airspeed, the pitot tube. Pitot tubes are small cylindrical sensors that sit outside the body of the plane. As air rushes through the tubes, they calculate airspeed. But sometimes pitot tubes temporarily fail. Air France and other airlines were in the process of replacing pitot tube. The pilots knew about the issue and how to respond to it. It has been 3 weeks since Flight 447 disappeared into the Atlantic Ocean. With only floating debris to study, specialists pore over a section of Flight 447's galley. They make a key discovery. The plane landed flat and at high speed. After months of searching, they've scanned more than 22,000 square kilometers of ocean bed and found absolutely nothing. Investigators are determined to succeed. They turn to the same automated underwater vehicles that found the Titanic. Still no sign of any wreckage at the bottom of the sea. Nearly 2 years after the Air France disaster, no significant wreckage and no black boxes. On March the 25th, 2011, the BEA begins one final search. Again, they launch AUVs to scour the ocean floor. They focus on a 37-kilometer wide circle around the plane's last known position. On April the 3rd, 2011, the wreckage of Air France Flight 447 has finally been found. It lies 12 kilometers northeast of the plane's last reported position, at a depth of almost 4,000 meters. With the crash site pinpointed, a second hunt begins. Days pass with no sign of the recorders. Investigators know that even if they find what they're looking for, 2 years underwater may have rendered the devices useless. An unmanned sub first recovers the flight data recorder, then the cockpit voice recorder. They must be handled with great care. One wrong move and a 2-year search costing almost 32 million euros will have been for nothing. A close examination of the second box, the flight data recorder, brings better news. The FDR data reveals that the pitot tubes did in fact freeze. The frozen tubes produce erratic airspeed readings, causing the autopilot to shut off automatically. The crew has been taught that a frozen pitot tube should clear itself in less than a minute. The pilot only needs to hold the plane steady and the problem will disappear. Whoever was flying the plane pulled back and pitched the nose up instead. In an aerodynamic stall, the wings lose lift and the plane drops from the sky. Inexplicably, the pilot continued to pull back when he should have been pitching the plane's nose down to gain speed and lift. 40 minutes before the accident, Captain Dubois is in his seat. First Officer Pierre-Cédric Bonin is in the right-hand seat. First Officer David Robert relieves the more experienced captain. Robert has almost 4,000 hours more flying the A330 than the other first officer on the flight deck. Investigators now know that minutes before the crash, the captain left the cockpit for his break. But it's unclear which of the 2 remaining pilots is in command. The confusion over their roles becomes critical when the plane hits a column of ice crystals in the cloud. Ice envelops the pitot tubes. Suddenly, the pilots can't be sure how fast they're flying. Stall warnings begin to blare in the cockpit as Bonin lifts the nose. Finally, investigators know which pilot put the plane into a stall. Incredibly, neither pilot can figure out why the warning is sounding. The pilots need to push the plane's nose down to gain speed. But Bonin inexplicably is pulling back, lifting the nose. The pilots struggle to regain control of their plane. But they seem completely paralyzed by their own confusion. Bonin increases thrust to maximum power, but it's no use. First Officer Robert decides to take control. He tries to push the nose of the plane down, a key step for recovering from a stall. But incredibly, Bonin is still pulling back on his controls. 90 seconds after the crisis began, the captain returns. Dubois scans the instruments, trying to see what's gone wrong. Finally, Dubois understands. First Officer Bonin is causing the stall by pulling the nose up. Robert can't get enough lift to recover from the stall. The aircraft hits the water at almost 200 kilometers an hour. By the summer of 2011, salvage crews recover 104 bodies from the submerged wreckage of Flight 447. The downing of Flight 447 was not caused by the frozen pitot tubes, but by the crew's failure to understand and rectify the situation.